It's okay. We give you a good lead in.
Apologize for being late, everybody.
That's all right. You're just right behind me.
I didn't know they still made Fresca.
We maybe only sell it here.
It's the only place. Yeah.
Yeah. You good?
Go. You're good.
All right. Welcome everyone to the Town of
Recording in
Essex Planning
progress.
Commission. This is March 28th, 2024. Call into order at 18:02. Are there any changes to the agenda or additions or changes that staff would like to call out? There are none. So moving on, ask the Planning Commission for a motion to approve the agenda as
So
is in
moved.
front of us.
Second,
Moved by Shu, seconded by Paula. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. What are we at? 6? 6-0. Okay. So, folks, the next thing on our agenda for tonight is we have to elect a clerk. So, Catherine, normally I turn this over to you to manage election of officers, and I think I should still stick with that.
Okay.
So I'd like to transition this process over to you.
So with the resignation of John Mangan, there's a vacancy for clerk. So I'll take a nomination for clerk.
I nominate Georgia.
I second that.
I'll accept. All right. So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That looks like everyone.
do I need to vote?
Oh, no. Oh. Would you like to abstain? We'll have an next step, not no. Okay, so motion passes 5-0-1.
0-1.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you, George.
Thank you. So, Josh, you and I want to take a night off.
George is in charge.
George is in charge.
Sounds good to me.
Next item on our agenda is public to be heard, and is that it is an opportunity for anyone in the public to present comments to us for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone like to provide commentary to us? Kent, are you running that from up here? Can we clear the recorded note?
You got it?
While you're up, Kent, could you turn on that screen?
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised online. And, you,
Just, are public going to be able to participate in the planning discussions, A, B, and C?
why not?
Sure.
Sure, sounds good.
I would say as a ZBA member, we'd welcome your participation in particular with number 2 or
Yeah.
B.
B and C, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise I'd say something for public to be heard, but here mainly to, for your discussions.
Shouldn't he be able to sit here?
We've had that discussion, and we'll get to it when we get to it.
Oh, okay.
So, next on our agenda, since there's no hands raised, this is a slightly different format. We are looking for a presentation from and discussion with the Economic Development Commission regarding zoning changes related to childcare.
Ken?
Boom. That's you.
Ken.
Oh, Kent. Okay.
Also, Rebecca Robinson, who's the chair, is online.
Okay.
Hello,
Hi, Rebecca.
everyone.
So please, who wants to start us off? And
Ken's going to kick us off, and then we can go through the discussion.
okay.
Hi, I'm Ken Signorello, and I'm a member of the Economic Development Commission. This is a resolution from the EDC to you. So I'm going to just briefly explain to you how it came to happen, and then let Rebecca take over and explain some of the details. So the Economic Development Commission meets with businesses every month. We've met with 6, I believe it is now, this fiscal year. And One of the businesses that we met with is Growing with Wonder, which is, I think, right in your neighborhood, Dusty, if I'm not mistaken. Childcare business, a childcare facility. And one of the things we always ask businesses when we meet with them is, what can the town do to help make businesses like yours, or yours particularly, more easier to operate? And one of the things we learned at Growing with Wonder was that while it might be helpful if childcare facilities like hers could be located in residential areas. So what I did at that point was looked at their zoning regulations a bit, found a few ambiguities in the cross chart that shows the different uses and where they're allowed, and met with Catherine, and she agreed there were a few issues that could possibly be cleaned up. Contacted a few other folks, Ray Garofano, for example, who was on the EDC before and had a lot of interest in childcare located in the town. And you'll find the memo from her actually in your package. You couldn't attend tonight. And we came up with this resolution. I wrote it primarily. I had the members of the commission go over it. We approved it together, and everybody signed it and have submitted it to you. So I think at this point I will take leave and let my chairperson, Rebecca Robinson, take over the presentation.
Thanks, Ken. There's a few insights that we've been digging into when we've talked about economic development in the community and how we can support. A few of the insights that have been brought to us is that 3 out of 5 of Vermont's youngest don't have access to childcare needs. Over 195 million is lost annually with earnings, productivity, and revenue. And over 1,400 additional childcare slots are needed in Chittenden County alone to support the gap that we have in our area. And I think that we've been talking a lot about is an EDC of when we think about bringing people into our community, what are some of the basic needs that are needed to be met? And one of them is childcare. So what we have in the resolution that we're asking for is really 2 areas. One is to correct some of the definitions to align with the state definitions. So you'll see them listed out on exactly what the definitions are that we're asking for them to be adjusted to. And then there's also some ambiguity in adult versus child care that changes some of the different zoning practices. So we just wanted to help clarify and clear up to make sure that we're meeting the standard state definitions. And then secondarily is around permitting child daycare wherever possible with fewer conditions. So residential is one of the pieces for consideration. And a lot of this is also, if you think about our community in the town of Essex, we actually have a lot of our elementary schools, middle schools, et cetera, within residential areas. So for opening up some of the potential abilities for people to have childcare in some of these areas more could help service our community and needs for closing the childcare gap. So this is what we wanted to present. And then there is a formal letter. Representative Ray Garofano wasn't able to make it tonight, so she wrote a letter in support of everything that we've laid out. And then I did want to open it up for others who are in the room if they wanted to use their voices to be heard. So I think Luann and Dawn are there as well in the room.
I'm a resident of Essex, and I also work at Let's Grow Kids. And Ray asked me to come because she knew she wasn't going to be able to make it because of the busy time in the legislature. Excuse me. With the passage of Act 76 last year, Vermont moved into being a national leader in states who are investing in a strong infrastructure for a child care system. It's just beginning to roll out. Act 76 increases the support for families, including an estimate by the Joint Physical Office that most Vermont families with children 0 to 5 whose parents are in the workforce will by October of 2024 qualify for some child care assistance from the state of Vermont. Families whose income is up to 575% of the federal poverty level will qualify for some assistance. A smaller increase of families eligible will happen next month on April 7th, where families with incomes up to 400% of the federal poverty level will qualify for child care financial assistance. This is compared to about 175% of the federal poverty level as it was previously. So you can see the state is stepping up to really increase the supports for families to pay for child care. At the same time, the state paid reimbursement rate and readiness payments to child care businesses, both family child care and licensed centers, are moving toward the cost of care, allowing programs to compensate experienced credentialed teachers to stay in the field, and the state is investing in increasing capacity by offering expansion grants with technical assistance to qualified child care business leaders. And another change that is happening on July 1 is that legal residents who are not U.S. citizens, who are key members of our workforce here in Chittenden County, will qualify for child care financial assistance through this new law as well. Previously, non-citizens were left out of receiving support. A strong economy and workforce needs housing and child care that fits the needs of the family. The key to quality child care is trained, experienced teachers partnering with parents within a program with a sustainable business model. We've never had this in Vermont, and we are moving closer. In Vermont, in Chittenden County, we do not have enough child care available for the current workforce. We don't have Essex specific data at Let's Grow Kids, but so I was only able to narrow it down to Chittenden County. But in Chittenden County, 79.74% of families with children under 5 have all available parents within the workforce. 79%, almost 80%. Given the current capacity, Chittenden County needs 1,479 additional infant, toddler, preschool combined slots to serve the needs of these families. The good news is that with additional financial incentives being offered, qualified and skilled childcare business leaders like Dawn are looking to expand existing programs and open new programs. With the new jobs coming into Global Foundries, Keurig Green Mountain, our families, our community will benefit by removing barriers. Childcare businesses are good neighbors. I'm happy to answer questions if there are any, but I'll turn it over to Dawn.
I have my little speech on my phone, so. Hi, everybody. My name is Dawn Irwin, and I'm the owner and director of Growing with Wonder, which is located in Essex. First, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting. The fact that we're even engaging in a conversation like this fills my heart with hope. I have been an early educator since 2010, an advocate for the field and Vermont families since 2015, and I've been a small business owner since 2020. Early childhood education has been on the brink of collapse, and trying to stop this collapse from happening has been difficult, to say the least. One way Vermont has tried to right the ship is with Act 76, which has allowed the state to invest money, some much needed funds into the field. Another crucial element for our field is professionalizing the language used to describe ourselves and what we do on a day-to-day basis. Through my years of experience as a licensed early educator, I have seen how essential it is to change the vernacular surrounding our profession. People will not take our jobs seriously or recognize us as qualified professionals when terms like daycare and babysitters are associated with our work. I would like to thank the Planning Commission for their efforts to rectify this issue. Additionally, finding a way to create more high-quality early childhood education programs is another crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Essex, Vermont, like many other towns, has zoning laws that are designed to maintain the character, safety, and economic stability of its various districts. They play a crucial role in shaping the town's growth and development. However, there is a growing need for early childhood education programs in Essex and across the nation. My school alone has a 3-year-long wait list for infants and toddlers. By the time I will finally be able to take these students, they won't need those spots anymore. And my wait list is not unique. Most programs in our area also have extremely long wait lists, especially for the infants and toddlers. The lack of accessible and affordable childcare is a significant issue that affects many of the families in our community. Early childhood education programs, both in-home family childcare and center-based programs, are not just facilities where children are looked after. They are an integral part of our community that supports working families, contribute to early childhood development, and has influence on our local economy. We need the ability to open more programs in various parts of our community. Imagine families being able to walk to their childcare program because it's located in their neighborhood instead of a business complex. Students and teachers creating essential connections and relationships with community members and local businesses that will help the children connect to their learning through real-world experiences. Partnerships between larger corporations and local child care program owners. Teachers developing curriculum from a place-based framework which supports a student's sense of belonging, stewardship, and a better comprehension of the world around them. This could all be possible if zoning changes allowed programs to open in most, if not all, zoning districts. Currently, Essex zoning laws do not allow for the establishment of childcare programs in all of the districts. This limitation can create barriers to access for families who live or work in areas where such centers are not permitted. It also hinders the growth of new childcare businesses. Before opening my program in Essex, I had tried to open my program in Burlington for over a year, but was ultimately unsuccessful due to zoning restrictions and covenant issues, some of which were over 100 years old. I finally opened my small school of 20 students on July 1st of 2020 in a local business complex in Essex. I would have chosen a different space if I hadn't been facing time restrictions. I have not expanded because I want any other program I open to feel like it's a part of the community and the neighborhood it is in, and not just placed somewhere because it was the only available building that qualified. There is a proposal to amend the zoning laws to allow early childhood programs in all zoning districts. This amendment would recognize the importance of these facilities in our community and the need for greater accessibility. However, it is also important to note that this change should be implemented with careful consideration. While we aim to increase access for childcare, we must also ensure that the character and integrity of each district is maintained. For example, in residential districts, early childhood education programs should blend in with the neighborhood, perhaps by occupying or repurposing existing buildings or unoccupied homes. In commercial districts, this could be integrated into multi-use buildings or created inside of a larger corporation's already existing locations. Amending the zoning laws in Essex to allow early childhood education programs both in-home and center-based in all zoning districts could greatly benefit our community. It would support working families, promote early childhood development, and stimulate local economic growth. Anything that we can do to expand access to affordable, high-quality early childhood education for Essex families that also encourages entrepreneurs like myself to open or expand their small businesses and employ Essex-based educators, the better. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I can answer any questions too if you guys have any.
Tell you what, why don't all three of you come up to that table? Yubi, why don't you come up and take the corner here, please? You're not gonna ask questions? Because I'd like just to have it be an area where we can just ask some questions from folks. So, commissioners, thoughts, questions? Trevor?
I have a question. I just would like it clarified. So there's essentially two types of
Childcare.
care centers.
Yes.
It's the family child care home and the center-based child care and preschool
Yes.
program. Okay. And the family child care home, is that something that the state recognizes? It is. It seems like a mouthful to me.
Yes, the state of Vermont regulates childcare, and there are three ways that programs are regulated. There are registered family homes. Those are women in their homes bringing in a small number of children to care for in their homes. Those are overseen by the state. Then there are licensed family homes where they are an actual licensed program similar to a center, but still in a home with a few more children. And then there are licensed centers that are the larger, where someone doesn't live in the building and it's more like a school.
I see.
What's unique about my experience is before I started working in Essex, I started my career at a school called Stepping Stones, which is based in Burlington, and it's located in a house in the Five Sisters neighborhood. And it was incredible because basically it was the neighborhood child care center. So all the families would walk to school with their students every day. They'd walk to pick them up. We could walk to the library. We could walk to the park. And it felt like a home. It looked like a home. It just was a part of the neighborhood. And the kids felt so much ownership over that space and that neighborhood and that place. It really did add a lot of value to the learning that they were engaged in every day.
How big was that center?
About the size of mine. So they had 20 kids a day, just like I do. And they also had 5 teachers in the classroom with the kids, just like I do. So I kind of took all my favorite pieces of the schools I worked at before and created my little space. So
Were you teaching at Williston and Richmond?
I was, yes.
My daughters went there.
Yeah, yeah.
That was there.
Josh, we don't see you right now. Do you have any comments?
Comments are, I really like this proposal. As longtime viewers of the Planning Commission know, I have 3/4 of a commissioner running around behind me at any moment. So I'm very, very sensitive to the issue and very appreciative of this proposal. So thank you for coming to us tonight.
Okay. I'm gonna jump in feet first, splash, and let's get the painful, let's rip the Band-Aid off. I've got red flags going up when we talk about doing this in all zoning districts, and red flags when we talk about doing it in residential districts. Specifically, if we just blanket say residential districts, the area behind your place would not in any way support the traffic required to support any additional, any business oriented childcare area, because there's no circulate. It's one way in and out. If anybody who's used to traveling on Route 15, as we've had a number of people in the public comment to us, entrance and egress from Sunset is extremely painful twice a day for the people going and coming from work. So that's just it's an example. The facility looks great. There's no challenges with that where it is, because you're not in the residential area. And I'm not picking on your facility, but I'm just as an example of if we said anywhere in the residential area. I can see tremendous challenges in the older areas of Essex that don't have the wide roads, that don't have good sidewalks, that don't have circulation, that aren't built for the increased circulation and the increased traffic coming and going. So I think a blanket statement of any residential is troublesome.
Could I address that?
Let me just don't lose the thought, because I'll release it in a second.
Try to remember.
I understand like the concept of being implied in Burlington of a walking of a neighborhood site, because we walk back and forth, and you can still see the neighborhood stores in Burlington, right? You don't have vehicular traffic, so you don't have that's not the same set of circumstances, criteria. So I'm worried about embracing and residential all areas of all zoning districts blanketly. If we can find a way to put criteria around that, so that if in a residential area where these conditions exist, I might be more open in my mind to looking at it. But again, a blanket statement of all residential, I've got warning flags. I've seen a lot of conflict with traffic. We've seen a lot of developments come through where the neighbors are very concerned about having a second exit in their area because of the increased traffic of just normal residential traffic. There's 2 primary developments in the communities, or adjoined communities, where that came into play, not that long ago. So to me, this is a real, in no way am I questioning the goal, right? The goal is clear. There's absolutely no question about the need. But I think we have to be careful about letting a need drive blanket decisions without the right safety protocols in place to make sure that we're not doing something that's a knee-jerk reaction that's going to come back and bite us. Because I would hate to create a situation where, children are, if we put a child care area as a co-habiter with an industrial area, and all of a sudden we have truck traffic coming through, and we have tricycle traffic and truck traffic. They don't go together. Again, I know these are just exorbitant, way out examples, but those are the sorts of things, when I look at this and the uses in the areas, I'm not looking at just the need, I'm also looking at the potential conflicts of those uses coming into conflict. Those uses coming into conflict. Okay, Ken, I'm going to release this, so help me out.
So remember, we've asked you to put in two different definitions. One is the home care. How many are those limited to?
Family childcare homes can take up to 10 children.
So the amount of traffic that that's going to generate is going to be very limited, especially if they're serving their neighborhood, where people will be walking to the daycare center. And that's one of the whole intents of having that ability. It actually would reduce traffic, not only for those folks that could walk their kids to school, but they won't now have to drive some other place to bring their kids. So net overall traffic town-wide would actually be reduced by allowing small residential childcare centers, not centers per se, but the home style in residential areas. In terms of safety, one of the things that I think is lovely about this, and we put it in the whereas, in the one of the whereases in the resolution, is that, let's say in an industrial zone, you might say, whoa, you can't put a child care center in an industrial zone, it wouldn't be safe. Well, they wouldn't be able to get a license in that situation.
Right.
So it's not going to be an issue from your perspective. They simply would not be allowed to get a license, they couldn't operate. So the safety aspect really isn't going to be an issue at all in terms of where it's located, because license will prevent that.
Okay. Can we go back to your first point? Or do you, I mean,
let these folks finish if they want to respond as well, and then yeah,
okay.
We'll come back.
I do want to speak on the safety aspect. There's regulations that we're required to follow as the business owners. And one of those things is making sure that there's a safe space for the kids to play outside, safe areas for the kids to walk. Safety is always the first primary concern. So Ken's right. If we were looking at a space where we couldn't provide a safe outdoor space or safe inside space, if it was in some big industrial building, they just wouldn't allow us to. We wouldn't get the license. Even if it was zoned for it, they just would not allow us to do it. So
there's that umbrella layer, which I think is pretty important, actually.
I also, however, think that if the zoning was allowed and these big corporations like Twincraft or Global Foundries really wanted to create some kind of space for a childcare program for their workers, you know, it would be something that they would have to figure out. So it would be on that business to create the safe space, not necessarily the childcare business owner that was going to partner with them. So I think the more hands we have trying to solve the problem as creatively as we possibly can, the better it is for Essex families.
Now look at the elementary school at Hiawatha, for example. It's in the middle of a residential area. This is a large elementary school. Generates a lot of traffic. I think that does have two ways in and out. You're absolutely right about that. And I think that probably that would be a restriction that you might want to have. You could not have a child daycare facility in a residential area unless the traffic flow would work. But the home style, I think that it's not an issue. It's going to serve that neighborhood and actually reduce traffic.
so let's talk about that, the neighborhood piece. And anybody else, you want to jump in?
Well, one of the things that I was thinking is that if we move ahead with this, there's no reason why we couldn't add stipulations that would be required to be met, regardless of where it is. So, you wouldn't want to put a daycare facility of any kind next to a bar. So, there are just things that
Okay.
that this board or whoever ultimately makes the decision.
The conditions
Yeah.
in the zoning, and I get that.
Yeah.
Like if we go back to you get the whereas and so forth, but your statement in number 5 is in as many districts as possible, in conditional in any remaining districts, where the only condition might be that only an existing structure can be used. So, I mean, this is where, I don't think this goes far enough. So I'm just, where I'm going to. As far as the neighborhood piece, if we look at Essex town as an example, I'm challenged to take the idea of the walking neighborhood piece, because that's about maybe a 4-year window. What's the youngest that you get? Newborn?
6 months old.
Okay, so we got a 6-year window, and then that population has grown out. Most neighborhoods don't have a turnover in overall community population every 6 years. So that neighborhood walking team that you start with is going to outgrow your facility, and then where's the rest of the population going to come from? Now, you may have families that have multiple children, so you've spread it out a few years, but so I think the idea of having a net loss in traffic is a challenge for me to embrace immediately. Again, I get the concept of limited numbers, and my own son was at a neighborhood childcare, home childcare, whatever the term is, and I know there are limits, how many kids and age and people and so forth. I get that. Again, it's just conditions on that I think should be in the town instead of a blanket, any residential area. It's residential area when certain conditions apply or need to be applied, like 2 exits or 2 entrances, something like that. All that stuff I think would be wrapped in, not just allowed in any situation. I'm thinking this out loud. And how do we get to the point of embracing greater childcare facilities?
Yeah, it would seem to me that if you say a center-based childcare, that would have to be more restricted than home childcare.
That's why I need 2 definitions.
Yeah, that you wouldn't want to, but you wouldn't want to take a residential neighborhood and have someone build a big, relatively big center with a parking lot in the middle of it. That you would want it to be at a place where there's other businesses, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of my point. But
To address the reoccurring families, Stepping Stones has been in business for over 25 years. And there are always families that are moving in and out of neighborhoods. So, and there's never been a problem with them being at full capacity. Their wait list has always been 1 to 3 years long. So I hear what you're saying about families growing up, but I don't believe it's as much of an issue as it looks like on paper, because young families are always coming in, and I don't think that will be as much of an issue as it might seem like it will be. From my personal experience.
That would be easy enough to understand looking at the duration of home ownership in the town of Essex.
Exactly.
Because I think it's a different population than Burlington. So again, it is the concept that you're looking at from Burlington, which has a different population base. Is that the same sort of thing that could be applied? Again, I'm looking at this as how to, and again, people have to tell me to shut up at some point.
Just really quick, Patty
Yeah.
Davis has had her hand up, and then I'd like to go after Patty.
We'll release the room here. We'll turn it back.
Okay, I don't care if you want me to go first, it doesn't matter.
I hadn't quite finished yet.
Oh, so,
I'm not quite looking for the crowd to tell me. There's more the commissioners to tell me to shut up. It's more like how do we get there? We want to get if we want to say we want to get from point A to, and if this is point Z or B or C or whatever, what do we need to do to make sure we do it right, and not just have a blanket statement of do it everything. So
It is your job to write the zoning regulations, I think, right?
we have a resolution in front of us from you guys that
So
it's not
your question
granular.
is, you have to write the zoning regulations. You can ignore that totally. I mean, I'm not suggesting
Do
that-
something.
I think we'd be looking at help and not just saying to do it, but like how do we do it?
Yeah.
So this is where examples of what are the
Are
other
you inviting
examples?
the Economic Development Commission to help with this?
We invite all commissions to help with us all the time.
Well, the chairman's right there.
let's keep the discussion going, and we'll figure out what the next, how do we get from here, move forward with it. Trevor?
I think one thing that might be helpful is to know, before you write zoning regulations, wouldn't you want to know what the state will approve? Like you said, there's certain situations the state wouldn't approve child care in that location. Well, you'd want to know what those situations are before you wrote the zoning regulations, so that there's nothing that fell through the cracks, I guess.
Well, the other thing is that you can
Make it a conditional use.
you can not prohibit a daycare facility in any particular zoned area, and then but make approval based on the conditions that need to be met.
So conditional use across the board.
So if you look at our use chart, which I can actually pull up.
Patty, we'll get to you in a moment. We haven't forgotten. Thank you, Rebecca, for pointing it out.
I think Rebecca did want to say something.
Yeah, I know, both of them have their hands up, so.
Okay, so if you can see, I know this has that weird watermark there. But the daycare facility, and if you look across the board, I should pull up a different version. This doesn't have that page one, but it's conditional pretty much already.
Across the board?
Across the board, except for it's not, it's permitted in the RPDI and not permitted in the O1, C1, or C2 districts.
What about our?
What are
They're all conditional already.
So we've got a stepping stone already. So the enabling language, at least the starting point is there, so.
And home is not allowed everywhere, but there's some districts where there's not residential uses allowed. So that wouldn't make sense to allow it there. But I think we could open it up into some districts where we have maybe existing homes, or like the MXD district might have residential. It could be there.
And as far as, neighborhoods aging out, I mean, I live in a neighborhood that is sort of in that transition, or has been for the last 5 or 6 years. And, but there's also always the possibility that younger parents can drop the kids off at grandma's and grandpa's house in the neighborhood, and that, that's, so just because you have young families or not doesn't necessarily limit.
Yeah.
So a couple things that come to my mind, one related to what you just said. What we don't want in our town is to encourage unregulated care. And that happens when communities don't have enough childcare. People start operating unlicensed, unregulated care without any oversight in their homes, in their basements, in their closets. That we don't want. It's not good for the community. Trust me. Don't talk to the licensors. They'll curl your hair. There is such a need for childcare that parents are desperate, and unregulated care is a concern. So making this more accessible is such a great goal for our community. I also think we have to remember the traffic is there. The 80% of our parents with young children are working. They're driving somewhere to drop their kids off. So the traffic's there somewhere. I get your, the one way in, that's a specific situation, but parents are driving, in 2 different directions to drop children off, to drop a second child off, and then to go to work in a third direction, because the availability and the accessibility is not there. The funding is there now. There's support there for parents and for business owners. So the more communities can support, the better. And to your question about, what was your question about? Oh, you wouldn't want a zone where it wouldn't be safe to. So communities across the state and across the country have childcare programs of all kinds in various types of neighborhoods. So they fit in various types in a lot of different places. And as Dawn pointed out, the first thing you do as a childcare business developer, owner, you bring the licensor in and they'll help you figure out. So that one doesn't worry me so much as, and I will also say, with all the supports in place, the finances, it is not an easy thing. 1,000 people aren't going to try to open childcare businesses in our community. So this is not going to, and this is not an, encouraging an onslaught of business development. So.
Patty Davis.
Yes, this is very good discussion. We are a very large neighborhood off of Sand Hill Road, right across from the RPDI district. There's existing daycares already along, I think it's Allen Martin, the street that goes across from Thomas Drive. And I see long strollers with babies and unfortunately, big trucks going by that we're trying to get off Sand Hill Road. We're all still working on that. It has been a bedroom community, this neighborhood along Sand Hill, lower Sand Hill especially, very large neighborhood for IBMers, is a bedroom community. All these homes were built to support these families. And as you said, they aged out and now we have all newborn babies. They're waiting in line to get into that one daycare that's off of Allen Martin. We want a walkable community. And I'll tell you what, the person in the middle, sitting in the middle at the table I see, our daughter Emily Davis went to Stepping Stones since age 2. We know the owners well. You're right about the neighborhood people walking their kids. It never ages out. I remember the owner from 1994. You probably know who that is. Yes, yes, I know her well, and we can't say enough good things about it. And I'll tell you what, you open a daycare along Sand Hill Road, right across that and a dog place. We have a lot of dogs and a lot of kids, and the trucks are gonna go. We were there before the trucks. We were there before the industrial. So don't give up. I am on your side. You go, girl.
Thanks. I just wanted to move into what we can practically do for next steps on, if there's certain zoning areas or certain conditions that we want to start to discuss of, do we need to go back and do some additional work to get more detailed, or is there something that from your perspective from a planning and zoning that you would have recommendations for, if there's somebody specific for us to start to work with offline and bring it back to one of the next meetings? I think that was more my question. Then the other piece that I had a question of is, pending on certain conditions and then opening up some of the different zoning areas. I mean, like as somebody who would potentially want to put in an application to open one of these places, they would technically have to come before the planning and zoning board anyway to get approval for their proposal. So I just think that there's a couple areas where, as a commission and board from all of you, that there's areas where you could check to make sure too, if we did open up some of the different zoning areas to allow for residential, you would still have almost like another double check to make sure that it made sense in that area. So those were just two things that I wanted to just like bring up for how we can start to come to what next steps or resolution could be.
I think, remember too, when we're doing it, I mean, folks have been involved in regulations for a long time. If it's not in the regulation, we really can't say things like, is it a good fit and so forth. We have to outline it. So that's why I'm looking to have up front what that means. I appreciate the clarity on the definitions. That would help get more granularity as one definition could be allowed and be a non-conditional use and the other could be a conditional use in certain areas and so forth. And I know the resolution doesn't call it. Your resolution calls out as many districts as possible and conditional in the remaining. So we're essentially halfway there already because it's primarily conditional in most districts now as well.
So we just have to sort of spell out what the conditions are for different areas.
Well, I think that's where I'm stuck with, and I'm.
Yeah, some help with that could be.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
So we have a section in the zoning regulations, section 4.5, that talks about daycare homes and facilities. So maybe we rename that, but there's specific instructions for how to review these already. So a daycare home is, and it fits the state definition, so serves up to 10 children, and it can be just approved through a zoning permit. A daycare facility, the larger one, so that would be, you know, over 10, has to go through site plan review from the planning commission already. If it's conditional, then it also has to go through conditional use review. And so there are a couple,
So after January 1st, that'll be a one-stop shop.
right, which will be a lot easier. But there's some, for the conditional use criteria, there's already some additional things that are looked at. So, including, you can't have on-street parking, noise is a problem. If noise is a problem, needs to comply with state requirements, has to have a playground and equipment. And then the planning commission review for site plan has specifics for on-street or for off-street parking, the number of spots that's provided, and screening. So I think there could be something that's rejiggered in here, and so maybe it's not conditional use, or maybe it is. I don't know. You know, I mean, we have something already to work.
So we
with.
may not be that far apart
Yeah.
from the goal, and if everything is more or less conditional now, maybe that's where we could ask for some more detailed review, Kent and Rebecca and team, is to see where, if where is it not conditionally allowed at all right now, that you might want it to be, and where it is conditional, is there legitimate reason to keep it conditional or review, or is, you know, let's look at that maybe in that next level of where we go. If we've already got some skeleton or initial review policy and practices, how far apart are we? Maybe that could
Right.
be.
And also too, maybe what our regulations say, whether or not it's the conditional use or not, that having to do site plan review, is that extra burdensome as well? Like I'd be interested to know how other towns are regulating this. Maybe there's some good lessons that we can learn from, say, Williston or
Colchester.
Colchester. Yeah, and maybe Burlington, but I think.
Yeah, it's kind of a different, that's a bit of a different.
Yeah, it's a different animal. I generally don't look to Burlington for our zoning changes because of that.
Although it might not be a bad idea to have the design review.
But if it, as you mentioned, you all have mentioned, if it's reutilizing existing structures and existing facilities,
It's a conditional use.
then we can move. Then we don't have the same need to say do a site design review. Then it's is it there? So, you know, I don't. After this sort of discussion, I don't feel we're that far apart. I don't think that we've got a really good starting platform to further modify this and to accommodate more than we maybe do now, or maybe we just look at it differently.
Clear. So the next steps then, it sounds like we'll need to work back and understand where some of the pieces either are conditional or currently don't have some of the conditional, and what those are, and what are the current barriers, and what would be some of the small tweaks that we would need to make to some of the zoning areas and what's currently included in them. And then if there are or aren't conditional, what are the recommended areas? So if it's as simple as using an existing structure in this zoning area and it's based on home care, et cetera, those were some of the recommendations that really need to be brought forward in order to have the next level of conversation, it sounds like.
Well, it would also be helpful for us to have in front of us what the state requires of the different levels.
I'd be happy to bring you a regulations booklet. I can email that to you tonight.
And then what we can do too is just take a quick look at Williston and Colchester as two benchmarks to see how they're performing this, and if there's an opportunity to leverage some best practices there.
If we can, especially if we can start with what Catherine's dug out of the existing regulations as a platform, what do we need to change there to enable greater use? Because we've already got enabling language to a point. but we don't have these definitions, so we don't necessarily accommodate these definitions the same way. And we're all it's all conditional right now. So is there an opportunity to make something permitted versus conditional? And is the areas where we're not currently allowed at all, can some of it be conditional, you know, or permitted? This doesn't sound that, I mean, this sounds very achievable. Yeah.
Yeah, just,
Justin, can I pipe in? I can't seem to find my hand.
Yeah, hang on just a second. Yes, just go ahead here in the room for a minute.
I don't want to stop the zoning conversation, but I hear that we're getting to the end of this conversation, and I just, as a person who's done this work for 50 years in Vermont, and know that the people in this work, like Dawn, are credentialed professionals, and these programs serve the needs of families. I really urge us to all be in agreement, though, that the word daycare that is offensive and archaic disappears from our zoning regulations here in my community where I live. That is a term that was developed a long time ago and is not used in any sort of
Professional.
professional language. It does not describe the work that is done and the care and the early education that is provided our Essex and Vermont families. So I just wanted to slip that. I know that sort of, there's two pieces of this.
You got it at number 5 already, so you're nice and clear.
I just wanted to just make sure that is, every time I hear the word daycare, I just might stop.
Cringe.
Okay. Was it Patty that wanted to speak?
I just wanted to add one comment. I know I'm not on the planning commission anymore. I've learned a little bit, though. I suggest the planning commission look at the sister neighborhood, because not only because Emily went to Stepping Stones, but Stepping Stones is a great example of a walkable community that our large area of Essex neighborhood along Sand Hill, we're only one of 2 big, large neighborhoods, want that walkable community that Stepping Stones has, so we can cross the street and drop our kid off in a stroller. If they looked at Stepping Stones and the sister neighborhood, just that neighborhood, I think they should look at Burlington. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Ken?
I want to remind you that the resolution has 2 general distinct sections. It's asking you to clean up the existing zoning regulations, correcting some of the terminologies like daycare, and some definitions. That's just correcting what's already in play. I don't think that's going to be a major problem. It's not changing anything per se. It's just making it more specific and accurate and consistent with the state regulations. In the second part, you're going to be doing a zoning review anyway. We just passed a new town plan. There's going to be a lot of work done on the zoning regulations, I would assume. This will be included in that. Only other thing I'm going to say is that I don't have any kids. So why am I so interested in this? I've got ears. And I hear constantly people saying we need more daycare. It's a
Childcare. What's the
Child.
Sorry. Thank you.
Just elbow him when you say
Good. So I constantly hear that. I heard it from Ray when she was on the EDC. I've heard it from Georgia, in fact. I've heard it over and over and over again. So after you're done with the tweaks that need to be done for the corrections, I'd like to suggest that the attitude that the Planning Commission have is, what can we do to make this happen as much as possible, instead of why can't we do it? So instead of being a resistor, try to be an enabler. That, I think, would echo well in the community. There is a tremendous, now with Act 76, there's going to be even more call for daycare, childcare. That's it for me.
Commissioners,
Justin, can I pipe in for a second?
just a moment, please.
Okay, sorry.
I agree with Josh, what Ken just said. Yeah, this is definitely a huge need. I mean, this is only addresses one small part of that need, but it's something we can do. I mean, I think it definitely looks like the language seems like it would be an incredibly easy lift. You just change that language. And then, yeah, I mean, the one thing I was wondering about was with the licensing, is it every year? Is there a relicensing? Or is it a one-time thing?
You get relicensed.
Okay.
So, and we're inspected by a licensor every year.
Okay.
And we
4
are,
times a year.
yeah.
4 times a year they come into programs.
Okay.
There's also, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but there's also another program called the STARS program, which programs, if you want access to Act 166 funds, it's, a priority to get as many stars as you can for your program. And so that's another level of qualifications.
Oh, that's the 5-star thing I keep on hearing about.
Yes, yeah.
The quality rating system
Yeah.
for our state.
Because
Yeah.
that was my only concern, was if you're putting childcare in an industrial zone that's being built out and then something comes in next door after it's already open, then, maybe it's a hazard. But if it sounds like the state would be on top of that, that was my only concern. I understand the concern about the traffic, but like in the neighborhood I live in, there really aren't that many kids. Like the idea of walkable, if there's only one entrance and exit, I guess there is. The Lang Farm neighborhood, I guess there is more of a concern there, but
And it's not so much, just to be clear, it's not so much just concern for the kids, it's also concern with conflicting traffic. Like, for example, this evening, vehicle coming off from 15 came fast, swung wide, and I was looking at the real close to the front end of that vehicle as I was leaving to come here, and it swooped in. Anomaly. It doesn't happen every day, but that's the sort of thing when there's a restriction on the traffic, which we've had a lot of people talk about traffic on 15. So 15 is an anomaly, and you even said that wouldn't have been your choice if you had others.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something to keep in mind. Is it what's the traffic situation? And you mentioned it, Ken. Maybe it's a condition that there has to be an entrance and an egress.
Especially for a facility.
Exactly. So again, I don't think we're that far off from being able to enable more with acknowledging the some of the overall community safety, not just the safety of the kids, which there's already lots of restrictions and requirements for that. Restrictions might not be the right word. Conditions. So let's see how far apart we really are with what we've got written now versus what it would take to make it be either a permitted use, or what would it take to make conditions be more readily available? And that's where I think you guys could help, since you've already done that from the EDC on this. To see, you've already done some of the work as far as identifying what the need is. Take a swing at it.
The EDC's job is to advise. That's what we're doing.
And we ask for advice all the time. We've asked it from the zoning board. We've asked for it from the Energy Commission. We asked for it from the EDC. So if you feel like taking a swing at it to get a little more in the weeds, please do. If you don't, we'll put it on our list. And we don't have, I mean, it's one group of people as well.
We have a part-time staff person only, so we don't really have a lot of bandwidth. I only have 5
So
people.
we won't worry about the how and the what right now. The idea is that we need to get more granular as far as what we need, and that might be something that we can, as part of our zoning agenda, we have this now on the list, officially on the list. So we'll be asking for additional.
In the state of Vermont, we have an organization called First Children's Finance, which is a business technical assistance program for childcare businesses. And there are people there that do this kind of work with all the towns, including the Colchester, Williston, neighboring ones. And I wonder if, as you're looking to clarify and things, if I could connect you with the name of someone there who might be a really great resource.
Could you pass that on to me?
Happy to.
Perfect.
That'd
Perfect.
be great.
Patty, did you have something else you want to add?
I think Jean met with.
Oh, yeah.
So.
No, thank you
was Sharon-
for
I was
looking into
Sharon?
the sister area of Burlington
Okay.
too. Look, we're stepping stones. Look at stepping stones.
Sharon, did you?
I'll pass, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Just as
Yep.
really quick as we're closing up, I just want to say thanks to the Planning Commission and Zoning Board for hearing us today and having us on your agenda. Thanks to Ken and the rest of the EDC for bringing this forward. And we will then continue this conversation and bring it up again and see where we can get to. So thanks for all of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, onward to the next item on the agenda, which is a DRB discussion.
We have Yubi come sit up at the table.
No, he has to stay way back there. There's a chair behind you. Please come up here and join us. You can sit there, you can sit here, wherever you want.
I should sit one of those nice comfortable chairs they made.
Well, why don't you? You can actually drag one over there. 'Cause there are
No, this
two-
is fine. No, this is fine.
We can share.
He
I
can
feel
see
more
the screen
important
this-
here.
He can see the screen this way.
The center of attention.
Okay, so what do we got?
All right, so following the select board meeting that I went to, I did send out an email just updating everybody about what happened there and just to reiterate everything that you all decided on that you thought was important and the process and was supported by the select board. I'd say the only questions were really related around the membership numbers for the boards, and which is good. I mean, I think it's a good sign that there's support for trying to keep the board members, existing board members, either on the planning commission or going over to the DRB. That was one I think we were concerned about, so that doesn't seem like it's an issue. So as far as next steps go, I think we need to figure out the number issue. And I think, I've been working on the zoning regulation updates to, make those changes. In the meantime, too, just trying to merge the zoning and the subdivision regulations together into one document. So that's in process. I'm trying to think of what else we need to do. Really.
Set dates for the,
Set
dates for application reviews.
Right. Yep. Yeah. That was on my list too. So as far as like knowing if there's a development application coming in the door, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Just
like
making
the
sure,
last
right.
date, we'll accept new ones.
Right.
Like August or something like that. Nothing after the second meeting in
Yeah.
August.
Yeah. Well, and it probably depends on what kind of application it is as well. If it's, just maybe a sketch plan for something, I think we could see it. If it's a site plan, chances are that could get in the door in October and be fine. But if it seems to be a very complicated one that we anticipate will be difficult, then you're right. We have to make sure that.
Because we don't want to start it because it's either
Right.
anything that hasn't been finalized by December 31st has to restart.
No.
Not final, like each version,
Oh,
whether it's sketch, preliminary, or final.
Yes.
Every
Step.
stage has to have been completed, or it's got to restart after
Yes.
on January 1.
And it's probably better for applications, I think, as we were talking, to complete through final, even just for the continuity of review. But that would be up to an applicant too. I don't think we could say, no, we can't hear applications, but and sort of to that vein, we're going to start hearing some applications on the second meetings of the month now, just to make sure we don't get the backlog.
Thoughts, questions?
Oh, first question, I guess, is charter been approved?
I don't think the governor has signed it yet, but I think otherwise
I mean,
it is.
That could be an issue.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't
it's
like
like
us.
that, it ain't over until somebody sings
Yeah.
or whatever, you know?
Yep.
And, you know how our legislature can be kind of fickle at times, so, and the
So,
governor,
I'm
whatever.
pretty-
But anyway, it sounds like it's pretty good, but,
Yeah. Yep.
you know, that could change things a lot, so.
Chickens have not hatched fully yet.
Yeah.
What's the expression? Don't count your chickens.
Yeah. So we were suggesting, I think, we had variability between, we had talking seven on the planning, and either 7 or 5 on the DRB.
Right. Yeah, and then a question of alternates too in the DRB. Yeah, and the select board, I think one member was thinking that maybe 7 was too much for the planning commission, and it was mostly, I think, based on filling vacancies. Well, we have a problem filling vacancies. I don't think we have had a problem with that particularly on the planning commission. I think a larger number is good just to provide a diversity of opinions and background and experience. What you have now, I fine.
And it looked like Greg was fine with that, so I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
So going to the DRB, was there, I mean, we had mixed feelings when we met, when all of us met, whether it was 7 or 5 would be the number provided. And I'd go so far as to say let's flip a coin, but then include in it a recommendation or requirement that we revisit the number in 6 months to a year, whatever, and adjust down or up as the sitting commission and select board felt appropriate.
Right. And that was, I think, part of the plan anyway. I mean, they do exactly. There are other issues that would be cleaned up as well. So, like, for example, the number of meetings per month.
Right.
Yeah, and the idea of the alternate, I think there was some banter around the room with you all on that. I don't think the select board had as much to say about alternate.
If we did have a question, I don't know who brought it up, but if we have more than a single alternate, then it's who gets called, who gets, who's do they have to set a rotation? Is it first come first? I mean, I think that's more of a challenge, and we've been successful with an alternate, with a single alternate, and I don't think we've ever needed more than one.
For quorum purposes.
For quorum purposes.
Yeah.
I don't think the zoning board's ever had an alternate designated.
You came close last week.
I like 7 if you're gonna do a straw poll. I think 7 on the DRB is. Just leave it at that.
I'm a 7. I mean, there's value in numbers.
Same reason for the planning commission.
Correct.
Yeah.
The more voices you have, I mean, the DRB is going to be a little bit different than planning. Planning is more.
Well, it's long range.
But planning is more opinion, so you want to have more, I think you want to have more, as many opinions as you can that's still manageable. DRB is going to be more, I think you mentioned it from a zoning perspective. It's either black or white, 1 or 0. I mean, it's less ambiguity, but the previous planning functions rolled into the DRB do introduce some interpretive stance. I don't believe that's going to disappear. So I think now we have may not be quite as cut and dry.
It's quasi-judicial, so you need to have those opinions.
So that's why I like the 7 number, because it's awkward when we get down to 4 people and have a meeting and you have to have a unanimous decision. Now, if it was 5, would it be 3?
Be 3.
Right.
Okay, so it's still
cumbersome.
Yeah.
Can I ask, in the past couple of years when there's been an opening, from what I've seen, there's always been at least one applicant. I don't feel, I know there was concern, I watched the meeting, and there was definitely concern about getting enough people, but I don't think that's a concern.
I think there's been openings on the zoning board.
Yeah, we've gone times when we've been short a member for long periods of time. So that would be one of my concerns with 7 and 7. I don't disagree with 7 and 7, 7 planning, 7 DRB, but that has been expressed about the ability to get people to be on those boards. The idea of being able to go 6 months and revisit it, I think that's a good idea. I do agree with you that it's more appropriate for 7 on the planning commission, because as you've already said, you're seeking opinions there, and so on. So the more input you get, the better. On the DRB, you're not seeking opinions. You're seeking for people to listen and adjudicate the evidence that's being presented. So it's a little bit different thought process or whatever. So that's my thought. I can see a problem with filling both boards. You might also say that the planning board, you might ask for someone that wants to be on the planning commission, what was their motivation for wanting to be in the planning commission? Was it because they really wanted to plan, or was it because they wanted to do site plan reviews? Okay, those are kind of two distinctive things. Zoning board, you know, that's pretty much a one-shot kind of deal. You're being an adjudicator for whatever comes before the board. So a little bit different motivations for, you know, so it'll be interesting to see who applies and how the boards get set. So it's they're going to be slightly different, and that's been one of my I don't want to say issues or problem or whatever, is that one of the things I think about is that when you're blending site plan review and a zoning variance, for example, you're kind of doing a little kind of two different things in a way. Okay, so because in like in sketch plan, for example, as a planning commission and as a DRB, you would have opportunity for the board members to have some input. That's a good idea, but I'd like some maple trees rather than elm trees. You know, when you're in the zoning board, we always have to keep warning ourselves, we are not designers. We cannot offer design opinions. Okay, now we may couch some words, offer some discrete, not suggestions, but thoughts. But we have to be very careful about designing something. So I think
discussion last week or last meeting about not designing.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's that, you know, and that's why with the DRB, one of my concerns, I say concerns, that's probably not the right word, but is that when the DRB, I think operating procedures have to be set to say, now we are operating as a in a type of planning commission capacity. Now we're operating as a zoning board capacity. So you change your hats a little bit, okay, depending on what aspect you're working on. Okay, now clearly there are elements of the planning process where you are truly adjudicating, okay, and now you're beyond the suggestion stage. So now the operations could be similar, but you know, so there has to be operating procedures have to be careful, I think, about how that is set up. So, but that's to come. I'd also add that I really liked what Catherine has done as far as going to the other towns, and you know, I'm a firm believer in not reinventing the wheel. One of my favorite cartoons is the Larson cartoon of the caveman standing in front of his cave, and he's whacking on this. He's fashioning a wheel out of stone. And in the horizon, he's standing, and he's looking, and here's a convertible that's just spinning away. You know, so you know, reinventing. You know, there's a lot of opportunity of it, and it was brought up again about what you're hearing about the Economic Development Commission. You know, and what they have from other communities. So I think that's similar. And well, anyway, I'll also jump, okay, because I know this is part C of your work plan. Likewise, I think there's opportunities to go to other towns and see some of their what they've done on certain issues in order to you know, to work out certain zoning issues, like it was said, as far as what they do for child cares, not daycare. Yeah. Or preschools. You know, another term is often used as preschool.
Yeah, that can mean something a little bit different.
A little bit different, like Montessori schools and so on are usually thought of as preschools, and I think some child cares, you know, kind of classify themselves as preschools and so on.
Well, and yeah, and the pre-kindergarten programs that in some places exist are a little more preschool than child care.
Yeah.
So Catherine, what do you feel you need from us and zoning board members to move forward?
Well, I think the settling on the number, I think, is one. I think at some point I'd like to get an idea from all of you on both boards what you would like to do for your, you know, when January 1st comes, where do you want to land? And some of that could actually help us a little bit thinking about our numbers too. You know, if there's some people that are like, you know, I'm just done, you know, then
Well, if we want to, I mean, would folks be interested in going around the room tonight and just giving you a sort of an initial thought process? Or do you want to hear people?
I'm
I mean,
happy to hear now. If
I'll
that's-
jump and say if this comes down to play, I'm a process person, so I would actually probably lean towards the DRB more than the planning. Josh?
I would definitely want to be planning, and while you were talking, I was looking up the status of the House bill, and it's been sent on to the governor as of Wednesday. So it's probably a pretty done deal, and yeah, I'd want to do planning in the January 1st shakedown.
So far, I'm not surprised with the.
I mean, that's how we've been sugaring out for the last few years, so that's not a, you know, stretch. Paula?
I actually really want to do both.
Shu?
You probably won't be surprised, but I'm not really sure yet.
Sarah?
Well, you know, I'm on both now, but, I don't know, what do you think? Should I do the DRB? Or, I mean, I'm a civil engineer and, you know, I guess I understand things about traffic and stuff like that, so maybe the DRB is better for me, although I do like to, you know, wax philosophical about.
We're not locking anything in here.
Okay.
Right? So this is any comment you make today, until somebody draws a line in the sand.
It's just being taken under advisement.
At this point, I think it's just to sort of start seeing where numbers might go.
Yeah. But I mean, I do both. I like both. Enjoy it.
I would want to stay on the planning.
So not a surprise.
What did you say, Georgia?
Stay on planning.
Interesting.
I don't know. Can we ask you, Hebe?
You could ask me, but I'd probably say that, you know, ultimately, it's up to the select board anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't know who's going to be coming out of the woods, you know?
Right.
There could certainly be some folks that are just chaking at the bit, you know?
Yeah.
to-
So the as this flies, as I understand it, the planning commission doesn't go out of existence. So anybody who's currently a planning commissioner who chooses to is a planning commission until their term expires.
Correct.
Without anything else. The DRB is new, so it would require an application process. Now that I think is something we may potentially could bring up to the select board to find out whether or not, you know, they would entertain the idea of if the current volunteers who have a term in either the planning or the zoning board want to be on the DRB, would they just be willing to transition them? Or would they force a reapplication? Because that could change that list, to be quite frank.
And that question was not asked.
I do think that, and it was brought up, that one of the things, I don't want to say it have paused, but we're on a DRB, it would be good to have someone from the planning that has previous experience on the planning commission, because as you brought up, it's like, what was the philosophy behind the way this particular regulation was established? You know, it's the old Bill Clinton. What is the definition of is, okay?
Yeah.
You know, so you need to, it's good to have that
Context.
well, crossover, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. You know, at least initially, you know, it's not been unusual when, in some cases, because, well, not unusual. It happens all the time. When something comes before a court, they're always citing previous decisions, okay, and so on, and trying to understand what the philosophy was. So I think that's a good thing to have someone from the planning commission, certainly, and serving both boards is probably not a bad idea initially. I'm not so sure that should continue. I would think that would be, that's like having the lawmaker now become the adjudicator.
Right.
Okay, so that to me would, I think as you go forward, you know, once you've crossed over the philosophy, if you will, and have got a better understanding and more experience on the DRB, you don't need that double board stuff.
Well, but it's always good to have some conversation between the people who are implementing.
Oh, no
what-
question.
And so to have, whether it's, just in an advisory role or what, to have some sort of ongoing connection between the two. And, questions may come up where the planning group may want input from the DRB in terms of things that maybe need to be looked at.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not disputing that, and it's been talked about that to have periodic meetings between the two boards to exchange ideas and so on. But to have someone on both boards and now have their influence from the planning commission be inserted into a decision on the DRB, I think that you'd have to be careful about that.
In the current situation, when the planning and the development review is done by the same group, I don't see that being a conflict. So I don't think
Right.
we're fixing something that is broken now, because we're not getting inside information. It's all part of this. We judge the applications based on the existing regulations, and then we turn around and say we need to fix that, and we put that on the list to do zoning regulations, but we still put it in. There have been a number of times where we've had to vote affirmative, even though we don't like it, because the regulations, it meets every single regulation that's there. And you can't say no if it meets checks off every single box. Sometimes you just have to fix it. So again, this might be one of those things where we have, if the select board would agree that there should be crossover, then it could be on a revolving basis. It might not be the same person. It might not be you're on both boards for a period of time. It might be that you take somebody from, you switch them over, share time or something like. I don't know that it matters too much, but once a month or something like that, somebody goes back and forth.
Well, time, and that could be a pretty big time commitment too, depending on the activity you have on the DRB and the planning commission.
I think whatever we put in place for both commissions, I think should have a 1-year check-in to determine whether or not are we meeting enough. Do we have enough people? Do we have too many people? If we have too many people, then they just would say as terms expire, we're gonna reset to a 5-member board or whatever. If we don't have enough people, then we're gonna expand it to a whatever.
9, can go up to 9.
Are we meeting enough? The planning commission needs to meet more. Now, you had mentioned that even now, we could do things on an ad hoc basis. But if we're doing it on an ad hoc basis regularly, you might as well make it formal.
You can always cancel a meeting too.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
I think that's good.
Josh, you've been quiet. Any comments?
Just a lot of playing truck noise in the background here, but so I think generally the 7 is a good idea, and I also like the notion that if we find out that 7 is for some reason too much on presumably the DRB, as people retire, we could the select board could agree to notch it down to 6 and then to 5 or what have you. But I pretty much agree with what you've been saying.
I do think we ought to request an alternate for the planning commission, for the DRB. That has proven to be a valuable tool. Not reflective of the individual necessarily. I don't want to call you a tool. But it's been helpful, even when we first instituted that with John Malden, when we had a commissioner who was out of the country for an extended period of time. And wanted to come back. We were able to use an alternate to fill that space. And if the alternate is available to come to meetings, they stay current with what's going on, so they're able to fill in as a voting member easily. 2 people, I think, would be a stretch. If we're questioning whether or not we can get 7 on a board, then I think to get 7 plus 1 plus 1, I think that would be a stretch. And an uninformed alternate isn't always a benefit.
Right.
But one of the things that Josh brought up is like, I would expect that because the DRB is going to be new appointments, that they would be staggered,
Yes.
so that there's almost, it's built into there that you could have with attrition, if the select
Yes.
board or whoever decided to reduce one, last one in, first one out kind of thing or whatever, so.
If they would take the existing members and transfer their current terms to the DRB, then we'd have staggers.
See, but my suspicion is that it's like a restart, complete restart. DRB's brand new thing, so you would have to have brand new members.
You do.
With
You do
brand
with
new
it.
terms or
There
whatever.
could be, well, it should be staggered.
Should be
let's
staggered,
Say,
yeah.
Dustin, you have, what, 3
I have 3. I think I have 3.
years left?
Yeah, you could make the appointments based on what's
Yes,
left. or
what's left.
whatever. Yeah,
That's what I meant.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
is transition
Yeah.
transitioning the remaining term. The value would be you maintain the knowledge base that you've got now, but you've got the attrition that would either allow you to either reappoint or interview new people when that term expires. The same thing that happens now,
Or not.
or not.
And we decided that we're not going to refill this position, so whatever, so, anyway.
That would be the potentially the easiest transition period, because we've got the other concern that I have, and it's been noted, I think Ken even mentioned it in one of his earlier presentations to us, is that the knowledge that people have at the tables today, if that is not carried over, then we really are on a full restart on January 1. And I'm thinking more of the DRB than the Planning Commission. And that to me would be a loss.
And I think the select board got that. They didn't have a problem with that idea of the institutional knowledge and making sure that existing members would have opportunity to serve. I think
In my mind, the question is less the opportunity and more the interview process. Would they, because this is a unique situation for this community, can a unique solution be applied, which is it's a new board, we've got these existing members, we're going to appoint them to the board, to the DRB and their terms will be new, but they will be for the remainders of the time that they had. So 1 year, 2 year, 3, whatever.
Right. Well, yes. So that was the question that wasn't asked, but the general idea of keeping current members or allowing current members to be on the DRB was supported. So how we get there, that's another conversation.
So again, talking about the work plan. Do you have any other questions?
No.
I mean, from that, because it seems like a good transition to.
I think
And you already crossed the line by mentioning the work
I did.
plan. So
It's my fault.
You just use that word, institutional knowledge. It's kind of, I like that term in a way, but then and on the other side, it's like, what institution did you come from?
that one
why
over,
are you here?
one over
How did
there.
they let you out?
And where are you going back to?
Corporate knowledge, maybe.
You didn't get let out. You're still here.
Yeah, so I think the work plan, in my mind, and this is what we came up with sort of last year, got readjusted earlier this year. I think the fact that we're doing this DRB transition, applications might be heavy. If we're doing applications the second meeting, and whether or not it's one or more, we'll kind of have to see how things go. I think the actual planning might not be very heavy this year. And we know we have zoning regulation updates, so there's maybe a question of what else could be maybe put in those zoning regulations. Do we see that as a possible lift, or is it just the bare bones, getting us to the next step?
Well, I'm sorry, can I?
Yeah.
With the number of surveys that have been done about Essex in the past year even, that have been online for, anybody to take, how about taking a look at the results of those?
For
everything.
Oh, just as a conversation?
Well, some of it had to do with what Essex, what people wanted Essex to look like. Just trying to remember what the last one was. I can't.
You mean the surveys for the town plan?
There was
All that
like the
stuff?
monkey surveys that are online.
There was one about town meeting. There was one about town meeting. Is that the one you're thinking about?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was that. But there've been several others in the past. Not necessarily 2024. It might have been 23, but yeah.
There was a local option.
So my thought wasn't so much of what else can we add on. We already have a work plan. It's like what do we have the capacity for?
I was just going to go to that. I mean, it feels like that we need to do X to prepare for January 1. Can we do X plus 1? That's, I think,
Yeah.
a lot of that's going to be, I think, on you, because you've taken on the melding of the zoning and subdivisions. So that in itself is a change that we have to get through and approve. Any of the the operating procedures that we need to have, I mean, to Yubi's point, they are going to potentially need to be crisped, up to make that be more appropriate for the DRB activities versus the planning commission activities. Even though we've got an operating set of operating plans or procedures you can take and work from, but it kind of feels like those are things that are going to take a fair amount of work to do well.
We have the bylaw modernization grant too. It's going to be coming to you at some point soon. So we've got some.
Yeah, so I mean, it's if we got started late winter on big zoning regulation updates, you're immediately going to have to shift a group and have a change in flow. So it could be disruptive.
Right. The planning commission should be, I think, through the process of the zoning amendments before January 1st. Whether or not the select board takes it up right away, they can sit on it. If it doesn't work with their budget season.
Well, I mean, if you were doing big zoning,
Yeah.
do we have time to get
Big.
zoning through? And that's what I'm just wondering is if we have to have a better understanding of the little zoning required that would be required to enable the DRB function or support the DRB function. Do you have an idea? I mean, I know you started looking at it, but have you guys looked at it yet to see if it's?
I mean, it's really just terminology that needs to be changed. It's not, doesn't, I think like in one case it does say something like the planning commission or maybe it's the zoning board doesn't have to review something if the planning commission's already reviewing it. So it's, it's things like that need to be changed. It's not major rewriting. It's just reconfiguration, really. If we add in some other things, though, say the Economic Development Commission comes back with their childcare changes, is that something that could get put in? Housing Act that went into effect last year, did that get put in? I personally haven't done like a deep dive into that and what it would require here, so that could be a bigger lift then.
The stuff for the child care. I mean, that it really seems like that might be not as great a lift as necessarily the resolution sort of made it seem to be.
I agree.
And I think we could potentially wrap that in and put some site requirements in it to make it, from a town community perspective, that would be better.
Yeah, I think that's doable. Yeah, and I think we probably, or I know we have a small list of things that we can, like kind of a running list of changes that maybe we could put some of those little things in. Off the top of my head, I don't have it But I know like your fence issue.
Oh, yeah, that's why, that's one of the reasons I hear.
Was one of those that the select board asked the planning commission to dive into that again. So maybe that should be a priority.
Small fences.
I think that was part of it. Yeah, the tall fence, but there was
Two different types of fence, like one on top of the other.
Oh, dear, yeah,
Here we go.
yeah. No, can I speak to that?
Yeah, well,
You
you shouldn't ask me, I guess.
yeah. Of course, I have some very personal experience with this fence issue, and I could give you some examples of fences that people could build that would be completely within the regulations you would think would be terribly abhorrent, okay? The regulation that we currently have is very, very loose, very wide open. I'd suggest that you look at the regulations for Williston and South Burlington. Those are two pretty good examples. I've looked at those. They get a little deep, but then the more you think about it, the more that it's important that these aspects of fences need to be covered. And it talks about when you go from getting a straight approval without having to go before for building permit or anything to now when you have to go before a DRB, for example, in order to get approval. So there's some very definitive limits where, today the regulation in Essex is pretty wide open. So, like I say, I think they're, again, reinventing the wheel, not need to. Williston, South Burlington have some good examples. Don't look at Burlington. Talk about bureaucracy at its extreme. Wow.
Yeah.
There's and for good reasons, okay? There are some good reasons because they got a lot of different situations. But yeah, ours is a little too loose.
If we've got essentially low-hanging fruit, I think it's gonna have to be maybe from your perspective, staff perspective, to take a look at something. And if it's got tendrils that go out everywhere, do we have enough time to chase them all down?
Right.
Like for example, reevaluating all of the uses in the RPDI. That's too big.
I think that's too big, and I think we've already decided that it's not just the uses that need to be talked about. There are other issues.
Yeah.
That should be a big package of.
Do you know if there are any statistics on how many child care facilities are generally needed according to population?
I think that was provided to us in the.
It didn't stand out to me, but.
Let's Grow Kids.
Yeah.
I think that's,
Yeah.
What?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but that information is there. We could see if we could pull that out.
We don't have enough.
Yeah. So there must be there must be some figures out there saying this is enough.
There's charts and graphs.
Yeah.
Because that would be a good place to start.
Well, let's see what.
No, I
TBC
mean on
comes
that
back with.
particular subject. I mean, not necessarily the grand start, but
Even if we didn't change any of the uses from conditional, we left them all as conditional, but we could put more criteria in to make the conditions, more clear, clarify when the conditions can be met, so that it gets back to the, a 1 or a 0 sort of response.
Right, or if it goes to permitted and it still needs site plan review, then you can put those there.
Yeah. And again, to clarify, not reinvent the wheel, clarify what local jurisdiction we would have versus state requirements. So, if we have something that's in complete contrast with the state requirement, we're going to lose.
Right. Or it's already taken care of by the state,
and we don't
need to look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you need, are there questions on this, or are you just, is this more or less the projection at this stage?
It seems like we're on the same page.
I think, I felt that this was a good approach, and I felt that this was, at this stage, any plan is gonna vary over time, and you're gonna have to adjust based on what we learn as we go forward.
Right. And what other issues might just pop up?
Hubie, go ahead, please.
Two other comments. One would be that in the reassessment, or if you will, doing the combination work that, it was brought up earlier, where for certain conditional uses, there needs to go to the site before the planning commission for site review, and then come to the zoning board. You know, those kinds of things that are going to clearly be absorbed into one action, so to speak. Any opportunity in that culling out or cleaning up, whatever, that you can make these things approved by the zoning administrator and not have to go before any board would be certainly the best route, okay? It seems as though we've had times when we've had things come before a board which is a very trivial, that it's like, why are we all here, you know, and so on. The other thing is, another area that I think needs some work is the whole B&B thing. You know, how, you know, what the regulation needs to be built. There's not really anything there at the moment so that's needs to be included in the ordinance work.
Now, does that just fall under the general short-term rental concept, or is
I guess that's what needs to be clarified. You know, what is a short-term rental, and how, you know, I'm not sure that the definitions go deep enough, and so on, so anyway.
Okay.
Those are my last
Patty has her hand up.
Okay, a moment. We have 2 zoning board representatives at the table, so can you guys also have this conversation there and bring back any thoughts, comments? So this becomes a joint task force.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Patty, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I got off and then I happened to get back on, so I missed a whole chunk of this, but my question is, who's the person that's sitting at the table that's on the ZBA? Hubie? What's his name? Sorry. Here, let me hold on. Well, I just want to say that Hubie, that you sound extremely qualified. I mean, you're great. Are you the chair of the ZBA presently? Okay, well, my suggestion is whoever, I was only on the planning commission a short time, but I really like the site review section. My question is, I don't know if you guys would consider having Hubie be part of the selection process on picking who's going to be on the DRB.
It's not up to any of us. That's up to the select board.
I know, but I wanted to comment that I'm very impressed with you, and I don't know you, but I love everything that you've talked about, especially when you talk about how, the court system and our judicial system should be separate. I totally agree with you that we have separate roles. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, I don't know if it's the Planning Commission or the DRB that's going to be responsible for transportation. And I was wondering if either board, the Planning Commission or the ZBA down the road, would be looking at other towns in residential areas, not just for daycares, but transportation, specifically freight, freight is not in any other town around us along residential neighborhoods. And I wondered if there's a law with the state that cements basically that you don't go through residential neighborhoods, and who's responsible, Planning Commission or DRB for transportation? I thought, Hubie, you might know. I don't know. Thanks. That's my question.
I can say it's not the DRB.
I was going to say, that kind of sounds like it's something to be planning in a future planning commission. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So let's wrap up this discussion for tonight. Hubie, thank you. Please come again.
Thanks for listening, and
Thanks for coming.
And look forward to greater. No.
We need to approve the minutes from March 14th. Can I have a motion for that?
I make a motion we approve the minutes from March 14th.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Any corrections that anyone wants to offer beyond what Sharon sent out earlier this week?
I tried to read Sharon as instructed before, too.
Yeah,
correct some things. And I wasn't able to reach her, so.
well, if we don't have them itemized, are they grammatical, or are they
No,
content? Well,
Con-
this is the only time to bring them up then. I mean, normally we can email them to her. But what do you have? Let's go through this page at a time.
well, hang on, let me get to it.
Georgia, can you pass these around?
Okay.
Catherine.
The whole thing about what I had said at the meeting is,
So
well, it's full of
we got
errors.
to be more specific. So give us
okay,
page
line,
one. Are we on?
line 85.
Okay,
starting-
so that's page 2. Line 85. Okay, alternate starting in line
I'm
85.
gonna put my glasses on. Hang on. So, I didn't say that Essex Center sits in 10 feet of sand. I said that my house sits in 10 feet of sand, because it varies on where you are in the crater as to what the depth is.
So strike Essex Center and say your house, Paula's
Yeah.
house, or your house. It's a quote, so.
Okay.
Yep.
And I said 10 feet of sand, then hard pan, according to Dennis Lutz.
Yeah, adding that to the end.
No, that's, yeah, at the end of sand.
Okay.
And I had noted that we, not just I, have water in our basements. Or we did not have water in our basements for about the last 6 years. It was until this year. And I also mentioned that the town had cleaned out culverts and a second collection pond was built in the industrial area. And that's when we stopped having water problems for about 6 years, until this year. So I think it's time to clean out the culverts, but anyway. So it was after that we started having issues.
That. What else? Okay.
My number are you on now?
Well, I gotta see what I'm. Oh, line 157, that's wordsmithing. Alternate Commissioner Duke.
So that's just a grammatical. Yep.
Yep.
On line, and somebody else can remind me, line 237. I remember mentioning wildlife connectivity. I don't remember mentioning anything about streetscape or parking.
So we have two choices there. If people don't remember the detail, we can either strike it or strike portions of the sentence. We can strike the entire thing or strike a portion of it, because we can't do we think.
Well, you can strike everything except, so was interested in wildlife and connectivity.
Okay.
I mean, if she wants to listen to it, and I said that, but that's not what, that's not what I remember, but, right. I
Okay.
generally have a pretty good memory for conversations, but
So in that sentence, strike
I am 80.
leaving parking and wildlife.
Leaving wildlife and connectivity.
Leave
Okay.
wildlife and connectivity
Okay.
in.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
So commissioners, do we want to, do you accept the amendments as Paula has requested?
You want to make a motion?
You guys, you and Trevor made the motion, so you accept those amendments. Okay. All those in favor of the minutes as moved and amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Minutes have been amended. I have one item on other business that I would like to put to the commission. we had made a change in our start time. I'm not sure exactly how long ago we moved from 6:30 to 6 p.m.
Yeah, it was
I
about a
want
year
to
and a
ask,
half ago.
I want to ask the commission if you want to be interested in moving it back to 6:30. I know various times folks have said that the 6 p.m. is a burden. Various times that folks have said 6 p.m. is wonderful. This is sort of a time we're going to be getting into I don't know how to say it, probably a heavier time of applications and work. And is 6 p.m. a burden? Basically, we don't have to make the decision today, but maybe think about it and, drop a note to Catherine over the week. And if there's a interest in it, Catherine, we can introduce it as an operating change at the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay, does that sound fair, Josh?
That sounds very fair.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, great.
So, and all it would be is simply moving the start time back to 6:30 p.m. Okay. With that, anything from staff?
The only thing I was going to mention is the upper Main Street parcel, the new town-owned site. We're getting ready to choose the consultant for that project.
That was the thing that was on, there were questions about that on,
Well, the town is starting a big project that will be public involved in
Okay,
the
good.
process. So.
Cool. That's good news. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Why?